Welcome everybody to the Department of Economics New Student Week presentation about the major and the minor. And so we will talk a little bit and we welcome your questions. And before I introduce everybody, I had a message that I was asked to convey from Sarah Hernandez, who will be teaching Intro Micro this fall. And she says, if you want to take Intro Micro this fall, go ahead, even if you haven't had Intro Macro. She says you'll be just fine. Many people do it. And so she wanted me to make that clear. Although Sidonia McKenzie and I are teaching Introduction to Macro this fall, and we say, if you want to teach Introduction to Macro, it's a pretty good class. Anyway, let me introduce our panelists here. We've got Jim Hornsten, who's a professor of economics here and is the first-year advisor for economics. And we've got Maddy Foutes and Daniel Luo. And why don't you explain yourselves at some length? Like Maddy, why is it evening where you are?
Well, hi, everyone. It's evening where I am because I'm currently studying abroad in Prague. I've been here for 1 week, which both feels very long and very short. Okay, so a little bit about me. I'm a senior. I'm majoring in economics. I have a minor in European history and a Kellogg certificate in financial economics. Beyond that, some things I've been involved with on campus were Women in Econ, which is a great club. You should definitely consider joining it. I just finished up serving as president of that club. I play club soccer and I'm a peer tutor for econ in my spare time. Although that's all kind of on pause because I'm out of the country at the moment. Anything else I should hit on or just leave it for later?
How about internships?
Oh, for sure.
Oh, do you have a job after this?
Yes, I do actually. So I spent the past summer working at a financial law firm in Chicago called Chapman and Cutler. And I will be returning there upon graduation. They have like a 2-year program for people interested in law school, but kind of minded towards people with an econ or business background. So I'm really excited. I had a great time there.
All right. And Daniel.
Right. Hi, I'm Daniel. I'm also a senior, which feels weird to say. I have majors in MMSS, math and econ. I have a minor in data science, and I'm also doing the master's program in economics. I also dropped the Kellogg certificate. So I have a little bit of experience in everything with the economics department if you're interested or have questions about it. I help organize the Northwestern Economics Tournament, which is a tournament for high schoolers. I'm wearing my shirt right now. And I used to be president of both the undergrad and econ and math societies. Both of my internships my sophomore and junior year are with the Federal Reserve, first in Chicago and then in New York. And I do not have a job yet. Currently, my kind of full-time thing is convincing schools to pay me some money to take classes with them for the next 6 years. So if you're interested in graduate school, I have some thoughts about it right now.
All right, fantastic. Well, Jim, would you like to take over and talk about how this little major works?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So one of the big things we want to get to this morning are some frequently asked questions that that first years often ask. Let me share my screen really quickly and just show you what the major looks like. So if you're an incoming first-year student, almost certainly you'll be interested in 4 courses or some subset of them. So our major starts with the Intro to Macro course, which is 201. We have a couple sections of that. So let's see here. So Professor McKenzie is teaching Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 11 a.m. in Fisk. And Professor Witte, who's with us, is teaching Tuesday and Thursday afternoons in Tech. We also have an Intro Micro course, Econ 202, which is Professor Sarah Hernandez. And let's see, she is teaching Tuesday, Thursday, 8:30 a.m. in Tech. So a common question is, where do I start? And the answer is, for most people, Macro 201 is a good place to start. We generally nudge people in that direction. The people in 202, roughly 70% of them have had 201 or they have AP credit. So for most people, the starting point is 201. But if it doesn't fit your schedule, or you're inclined to take micro first, that's fine. So when you read some of our literature, it suggests that 201 is a prereq, but it's not really. So either one of those would be a great place to start. Also, derivative calculus, which here is Math 220-1, is a good starting point. And a statistics course, and we prefer Stat 210, which is statistics for social sciences. We think of that as the ideal stats course to take because it was designed by economists and is taught by economists to an audience of people who are mostly econ majors. So if you're looking to start the major, any of those courses would be great. After you get through those courses, then we have some core courses where we have a few two micro theory classes, 310-1 and 310-2. We have macro theory 311, and we have econometrics 281. The general wisdom here is to start with Econ 310-1. Which is a prereq for 310-2. Oftentimes we advise people to figure out whether you want to be an econ major before you take econometrics. And we generally advise people to take 310-1 before 311. With all that said, some of you might be raring to go, right? You may have AP or IB credit, some sort of transfer credit for all 4 of those intro classes. And so on paper, it looks like it's not a bad idea to take the next one. But what we've found over many years and many students is that usually it takes about a quarter to settle in. So we like to let people come here and acclimate, just kind of get used to Northwestern, figure out, how do I have a new room and a new roommate, and I have to deal with laundry and dining halls and figuring out how and where to study for midterms and finals and things. So like right now, I'm teaching 310-1 this fall, and there are over 200 students already registered, and all of them are, sophomores, juniors, seniors, or graduate students. And so if you're first year, first quarter student, you're kind of at a disadvantage here because you're kind of joining a big crowd of people who are veterans, and they've already been through several quarters where they've had a chance to settle in. So we strongly advise you to hold off on those sorts of courses, the core courses, until at least winter. In winter, there will be a giant horde of people who take 310-1. And so it'd be a good idea if you're off to a rip-roaring start to sort of settle in here first and then get going on that in the winter. After those tools classes where you assemble a toolbox of skills, then you go off and apply those in our 300 level electives. We have a large batch of those. And so I want to show you that this year, if we look at, let's see here, we could look at the, let's see here. Let's look at the annual schedule. That would be a little easier to see. So hopefully everybody can see this.
And Jim, just to butt in here, so this is the department homepage, right?
Absolutely. So if you go to economics.northwestern.edu, you'll find a ton of information. There is, so if we start here and we start from the beginning, this is what the website looks like. Within the undergraduate little tab here, there's some specific guidance for first year students. So lots of advice here about what is economics, what can I do with the degree, how do I get started, what classes should I take, things like that. And I'm sure we'll come back to this in a bit. And then within the major, this is, there's lots of different paths through the major, right? Lots of different combinations of courses you might take based on your various interests. So anyway, so let's go back here. So going back to the schedule, I know there's a lot to handle here, but here is our annual schedule, and you can get a sense of the variety of things that we offer. So first of all, if you look at these intro courses, you see that we offer them every quarter. In fact, all of the core classes we offer every quarter. There's a variety of people who teach them at different times and different places. So there's a lot of ways of getting into the major and getting through the major. And once you get up, you get through the core courses, then, here's a sampling, right? So 307 is medical care. We have 308 money and banking, public finance. We have some history courses, development, complexity, experimental, behavioral. And so there's a long list here. And so you see that there's quite a variety of things that people research and teach. Okay, so I don't want to say too much here, but again, when we think about the major, there are really 4 intro level courses. There are 4 of these core courses that people usually take as sophomores or later in your first year, and then the electives that you would take primarily as a junior and senior. Okay, so Mark, do you want me to continue with first year sorts of questions, or do we want to move on?
Well, want to make just a couple of remarks. One is that I agree with you. It's good to start with 310-1 and not in the first quarter of your college experience. You don't want to be in there with a bunch of people who've been at Northwestern for a year getting toughened up by the standards here. But that's also, I think, perfectly fine to go do 281 or 311 after you've done the intros.
Yes.
That said, though, I do agree that I think 310-1 is more basic to the economics major, that the tools in 310-1 are more likely to appear in the upper level courses, and that if you don't like 310-1, you probably aren't going to like economics. So I think it is sort of, the best test of what you'd want to take here. And that sort of for your first 2 years, you really want to be shopping around because you don't know necessarily what the right major or majors for you would be. And it would be a shame if in senior year you took a class in history or psychology or something like that and realized, oh my God, this is the thing. This is what I should have majored in. So like you want to shop around a lot and make sure you're making the right choice early on, so there's still time to pursue it. And I think 310-1 is the best way to get a feel for what economics is like. Somebody had asked about, is what we're saying just true of Weinberg students versus other students? And from the standpoint of economics, we don't really care what school you're in. That, like, we got music majors and engineers and all sorts of folks like that. And we just, anybody who wants to do the econ major or minor, we're delighted. There are some special deals out there because of overlap or things like that. And if you're social policy or your industrial engineering or MMSS or HPME or something like that, then you might have a different, that you might have some class that overlap or something like that. But this is basically the rules for everybody. And on the minor, very quickly, or Jim, are you going to talk about the minor?
Well, go ahead if you'd like.
All right. Just the minor is essentially what Jim has laid out here, cut down a little bit, that it's the same intro courses. You need 310-1 and 281, and then 311 or 310-2. Or they can take both, and then 3 upper levels. That's all that's required for the minor. And I think that's all I've got. Oh, and as we saw from the page that Jim just put up about what the offerings are for the year, we offer the core courses every single quarter, including the summer as well, typically. And we offer a ton of the upper levels every quarter. But maybe Maddy or Daniel would like to validate or contradict what we've been telling folks.
I just want to chime in on the taking 310-1 in the winter or something, even if you came in with AP credit, because that was pretty much my situation to a T. Like the first 4 classes listed, I was lucky enough to have AP credit for all of those, but it was really nice. I agree, just to settle in. And also, winter quarter taking 310-1, I was in the same boat with a lot of other freshmen, and you kind of just develop this group and kind of expand your network. And maybe, you weren't going in there with a bunch of people who have just been in school way longer than you. So I definitely agree with that.
I guess I can be a little bit contrarian then. So I think it's okay to take 311 and 310 your first quarter. That's what I did. So I took the MMSS version of 310-1 and 311 my first quarter. I thought it was fine. I was the only first year in 311, so I had some trouble finding a study group. So if you're like, if that's something that's important to you, it's something to consider. But I think the course itself, if you understand calculus and if you understand macroeconomics, and the class itself is not too difficult. So
Yeah, I would warn that Daniel's pretty good. You mentioned MMSS, Daniel. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
yeah, so MMSS is it's kind of like an interdisciplinary honors program. So it's mostly run by the econ department, I think, and the idea is that if you're interested in graduate school in the social sciences, or this was the original idea, then this would be a set of coursework that would help you do research. And so we take classes in microeconomic theory, game theory, econometrics. Machine learning has recently been added because that's become more important. And it's by application. So if you're here now, you would need to apply at the end of in the spring of your freshman year to get in. And we usually take, I think, like 5 to 10 sophomore admits. But it's like a lot more quantitative training. And it turns out that this is valued by the market. So a lot of the alumni of MMSS end up getting placed in places like quant firms or top consulting firms or investment banks, if that matters to you. If it doesn't, they also get into top graduate schools. So if you're interested in either of those things, it might be something to check out. And the website is just mmss.northwestern.edu.
Thank you. Oh, and thanks, Daniel. And Maddy, now you're in Prague right now. Are you taking any econ over there?
I am actually not. You
That's
and I
fine.
had a conversation about this.
Yeah.
Northwestern's econ department is very strong, and with that comes wanting 300 level electives at a program to also be very strong. I'm mostly just taking classes for my history minor and looking to get a few credits. But thanks to AP credit and whatnot, I'm very ahead of schedule. So I'm getting to take a class like Prague's Art and Architecture, where we walk around the city and look at cool art and whatnot. So I'm looking for, honestly, I really love the econ department at Northwestern, so I'll be happy to come back and take some more classes.
That sounds like a wonderful lead into Econ 358 in the spring, the economics of art and culture.
It's on my list.
Taught by Jim Hornsten. No, I was just pulling Maddy in here a second because if a lot of people when they do study abroad would take econ classes, and if you take classes as Maddy described with, reasonable prerequisites, like, courses that are, well, you could take macro or econometrics or something like that. It's hard to take micro and study abroad just because ours is a little bit different. But, if you took like labor economics or even a class we don't offer, but it requires intermediate micro and say econometrics, we'd be fine with that for transfer. So again, so study abroad, you can pretty much make the same progress you'd make if you were here, taking a couple credits. Also, Jim, I think we led you off, but you want to talk about some of the upper levels?
Yeah, so I was I went into the Weinberg advising. I was going to try to pull up the AP tables. So one common question, maybe I'll answer this first. One common question people ask is, I've taken various AP exams and I have these scores. What do they count for? And what should I take next? So at the WCAS advising page, you can find a big table of transfer credits, and you can see, okay, well, if I got a 4 on the AP stats exam, then it turns out like the year 2020 was unusual, as we all know, because of the pandemic. And so AP exams that you took in 2020 sometimes get different credit than the ones that you took in other years, either before or after 2020. But a common question is, should I retake a class? And so if you earned a 5 on AP macro or AP micro, then you'd get the regular transfer credit for our department. And we would usually recommend that you move on, right? Even if it's been a little while since you took the course, or if you feel like a little shaky, that's still fine. What we tend to find is that when you retake a course, it tends to be familiar, and you feel like, oh, I got this, right? And sometimes people maybe get a little cocky and complacent and maybe don't put in quite as much time. And all of a sudden, maybe you're not doing as well as you probably should in a class that's pretty familiar. So we usually encourage people, go on, take the next thing. So if you have credit for Econ 201 Intro to Macro, we would recommend that you move on and take 311, the macro theory course. You can always jump back down, but generally we try to forge ahead, right? We also think about the opportunity cost, right? So repeating a class means you miss out on something else that you could have taken. We usually advise you to push forward. Another question some people ask is, could I take 201 and 202 at the same time, right? And I think generally we say, well, in theory you could do that, and there is some overlap between the courses, but generally it's probably wiser to space them out. Diversifying your portfolio is usually wise. So for most incoming first quarter students, you might have your first year seminar, college seminar. You might have like a language course, maybe a course that you're starting in your major, and maybe a distribution, right? A distro course, something like that. You can always take the next math class. So another common question is, I have AP credit for derivative calculus, which we call Math 220-1 here. So, what should I take 220-2 or whatever? The department only requires 220-1, and occasionally you'll find a class that asks you to do a little bit more. Often the training will be built into that class, but we generally, it's hard to take too much math. It usually tends to be a badge of honor and a signal that you have highly employable quantitative skills. So we usually nudge people toward taking additional math, even if we don't always use it. It tends to build up that side of your brain and helps you draw connections and just sort of understand everything a little bit more. So for example, Math 220-2 is integral calculus. So think of that as like finding the area under curves. So if you've had some economics before and you've thought about something like consumer surplus, right? I'm willing to pay $100 for a pair of shoes, but they're on sale for $70. So if I get those shoes, not only do I have the shoes, but like this $30 of warm, fuzzy feeling that I got a deal, right? I got a good bargain. And if you found the area of consumer surplus, in principles, it tends to be a triangle or maybe a rectangle, because you'd like to use straight line curves. But if you introduce a nonlinear curve, then all of a sudden, how do you find the area under something that, that's round? Well, that's how you might use integrals. So we don't typically use them a lot, but it helps understand the world, right? Daniel, you have to jump in here about math, right? So you want to say something about math and economics?
Oh, I was just going to say integrals, they're used in probability. So it turns out that if you want to know what the probability of something is, you can take the integral with respect to a special function. And really, that's everything in economics. Like if you ever take a very mathematical economic, we have a class like that, right? The economics of risk and uncertainty. I took a lot of math. I think that economists should take a lot of math. I mean, that's kind of what distinguishes us from sociology or biology even, right? Which is the ability to make specific quantitative claims and write out proofs that our claims are correct.
I am nowhere near as, math heavy as Daniel is, but I would still plug more math, even if it feels like maybe not. If you're at all considering something like Kellogg, even if you're not sure like take a look at what the certificate asks early. I know this is a bit of a tangent, but there's like a lot of math there, and you kind of have to get on it pretty early in freshman year if you're looking to apply like middle of sophomore year, I think it is. So I kind of kept going with math, even though I came in with credit for both 220 courses. Yeah, it's not always, a walk in the park, but I definitely never have like struggled with math in my econ classes because of it. I feel like the reason you have issue in an economics course shouldn't be because of like the math. It should be because of the concepts. If you're just struggling to get through the math, that's like not a good feeling.
Mm-hmm. Say, Maddy, could you talk a little bit about those Kellogg certificates?
Sure. Okay, so the Kellogg certificate runs out of, Kellogg, our business school. There are two of them. One is financial economics, the other is managerial analytics. Managerial analytics tends to be good for people who are into supply chain optimization, maybe someone like from an industrial engineering background, but anyone can get into that. Financial economics is more finance focused. I'm not sure who came up with the name on that one, but I feel like you could have just called it finance and gone the same thing across. I can speak more to that one because that's what I'm in. Honestly, I just picked it because I thought the courses sounded more interesting. They include, let's see, everyone takes Principles of Finance, which is just like a basic finance course, either certificate. Then Investments, which is a super cool class, I feel like, for anyone, because you get to learn how to manage money or think about investing, which pretty much everyone does at some point. Then Financial Derivatives in the last class is a special topics class that varies year to year. I believe this year it will be real estate investment, which is interesting. I don't think that's been offered before. Yeah, the Kellogg certificate's great if you're thinking about business at all, or just maybe want to get to kind of ground your econ major in some more practical applications. It's nice. It's a smaller program. You get close with your cohort. You'll find a lot of economics majors also do it, or people from other kind of quant backgrounds. I get asked often, or I did when I did one of these types of panels for Kellogg, like, oh, do you regret doing Kellogg because you're not going directly into business? I'm pre-law. I now want to go to law school. And the answer is absolutely not. I think it's great. I drew on it a lot this summer working in a financial law firm, and I felt like I was just able to be conversant in topics and understand what like a financial derivative was, versus, one of my fellow interns, she was great, but was from like a sociology background. So just try to like play catch up there. I never think it hurts to know like what's going on. And the classes are really interesting.
Very good. Thank you. Very good. There are actually a number of things that people can do to complement economics. And so both Daniel and Maddy have talked a little bit about some of those things. Mark, do you want to talk maybe about business institutions a little bit?
That's a great idea. And actually, after this session at 11 o'clock, there's a Roads to Business section, which will be a bunch of the programs that are sort of business adjacent here. That there's the thought that at Northwestern, all kinds of things are preparations for careers in business, and certainly econ's a popular way to go, but like industrial engineering, learning organizational change, Medill, there's all sorts of ways. And one program that a lot of economics majors do is the business institutions program. A lot of non-economics majors do it as well, but it's a minor and it's offered through Weinberg, but it's open to everybody. And it's you need some micro and some macro and some stats and some calc, but they also have accounting courses, which is a super important thing to take, whether you do business institutions or not. It's good to take accounting, and it's actually a really good accounting teacher. Like that accounting is not generally seen as a fun, interesting class, but this is Northwestern's exception there. They have some finance courses, some economic history courses, some interesting courses on investing and marketing, business writing. And in the spring, there's two courses that are just made my eyes bug out when I saw them. One is Amy Fowl, who runs the endowment here, who invests Northwestern's wealth. She's teaching a course on portfolio investing, which would be pretty awesome. And then there's going to be a course taught by Derek Gregg. And anybody know who that guy is? The course would be like the business of sports or something like that. And he's our athletic director. And so he'll be having, discussions of like, so why USC and UCLA and not Stanford and Berkeley? And who's next? And how'd you negotiate this billions of dollars of deal for the Big Ten network with, the television networks and things like that? And so those would both be classes that would be pretty exciting to take. So that's a nice program. Another program that a lot of economics majors do, and a lot of everybody does, is the Chicago Field Studies program. That it's important to get internships, and it can be hard to do that. I mean, you can hit up your parents' friends and your friends' parents, but not all of us have connections that way. And so like getting that first internship is tough. And the Chicago Field Studies program is a program Northwestern runs every quarter, including summer, where you can get an internship. You apply to it and you interview, and they do a pretty good job of matching people up. They've got a lot of finance internships and a lot of other things as well. I mean, you can go to their webpage. It's Chicago Field Studies. Google it, you'll find it. Actually, it's internships.northwestern.edu. And so, yeah, it's a way of taking one quarter of the year, like, or one of the terms, and, being on site, working full time, 4 days a week. And 1 day a week, you're here meeting with advisors and, being in panel discussions with your peers and presenting your notes about what you've learned. And yeah, so that's a really nice way of getting your internship career started. I guess one other area, that is worth considering as your first year is involvement in things. And it'd be good to get more out of Maddy and Daniel to talk a little bit about this, but that you should do things that are fun and that you're interested in, but don't just be along for the ride. That you should get in and be a change agent, be a leader. And so, yeah, so when you're then interviewing for things, you can say, what did you do? And you're saying, well, I was in a bunch of business clubs. Like, that's kind of dry. I mean, a lot of people do that. And when you're interviewing people all day, it's like, oh boy, another person in business clubs. We can say I was really passionate about this one thing and I got involved with it, and here's what we did. And I initiated this new direction for us, and it went pretty well, but it didn't go as well as I would have liked. And next time I tried this other thing, and went, like they want to talk about, you want to hear about like what an interesting person you are and what you're able to accomplish when you're fired up about things. And maybe Maddy or Daniel would like to talk about how they moved into leadership roles and how they sort of took ownership of things they cared about.
I can go first unless Daniel,
Fantastic.
You're really excited to say something. Just keep kind of the rhythm we've got going. Yeah, I would definitely agree. Being a real person in college and not just a robot who goes to class and, is in maybe like a pre-professional club or two is very important, both for like your own sanity, as well as kind of more pragmatically. I think, yeah, it definitely looks good when you're interviewing, and the people on the other side are humans too. They want to talk to someone with personality and interests and whatever, because people work together. You have to deal with people all the time. You spend a lot of time with the people you work with, so you want to like them.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I remember the last time I interviewed, which was for the internship I did this past summer. It was largely behavioral interviews. So I really was just getting questions, kind of either like, tell me about this item on your resume. But I think a couple of times, you just end up talking to someone about maybe, sometimes you get the question, tell me something about yourself that's not on your resume even. So I think that's where maybe a club or something can be really good. For me, I, tended to talk a lot about liking to cook in my free time. That was always something that kind of came up. And then I struck up this whole conversation. I think that was half of one of my interviews. I'm not joking. But back to the kind of leadership aspect, I think for me, a big part of kind of taking ownership in what I do at school definitely came through being president of Women in Economics this past year. That was a really great experience, just kind of learning how to manage an executive board and really work with people to find kind of a way, to accomplish our club's mission. Like, all right, get women and, non-binary economic students feeling comfortable in the major or feeling welcome if they choose to engage. Just kind of expanding involvement. But the question is like, okay, how do you do that? I didn't have anyone telling me what to do. And I think it's really a unique experience when you're in a leadership position to kind of have to take ownership for the decisions you make. And I think that was definitely something I talked a lot about in interviews. But my biggest piece of advice would genuinely be do what you love. You'll probably end up in more leadership positions in clubs you actually care about. You'll put in the time and it'll come more naturally than trying to force something that doesn't fit.
I think it was a good idea for Maddy to go first. I think they said a lot of the things I was thinking, but more eloquently. So that's good. I'll add maybe 2 extra comments on that. And so the first is, I think it's very valuable to join at least one club that's outside of your major. So if you're an econ major and all you do are pre-professional econ clubs, and the only people you're going to see every day are other econ majors, and econ majors are great, but that can get really boring or really, kind of isolating very quickly. And so branching out can definitely help improve your experience a lot. The second thing I'll say is getting involved on campus doesn't necessarily mean just having to do clubs. And so this almost goes, so like for me, I would go to seminars hosted by both the math and the econ departments. And sometimes they have social events. And so I would sneak into those. And I think that was really fun. And so that was almost like a, you can still do econ things, but you get to meet different people type of thing. So, and oh, also you can do research with a professor, which is what I did my first summer. And so there should be we should have an econ lab posting on the econ website that lists all of the current economics professors that are interested in hiring undergrad RAs. But the Kellogg professors are also very into hiring undergrads as well. So,
Daniel, what was your outside of econ involvement? If you feel like talking about it.
So I organized a math seminar for undergrads. So that's, and then I've also been helping the Engineers for Sustainable World Club build their aquarium for their aquaponics system. So I'm really into keeping fish. So I've been trying to like pick the right fish and kind of get the stones and plants all running and things like that.
So I was kind of hoping when somebody says an outside of econ activity would be less nerdy than doing econ things, but you went the other way, and that's fine. That's fine. Hey, would you two like to talk about some of the upper level econs you took that were good? It's limitable. Oh.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like we'll have different answers on this, but that's great because I think there's really something for everyone. I guess I'll plug one of Professor Hornsten's classes. I really loved Monopoly Competition and Public Policy. I took it this past spring. Great class. It really jived with my interest because I'm definitely into antitrust regulation and whatnot. So that was kind of a great fit where, kind of looking towards my future, like going to law school and whatnot, but another great econ class to fit into my major. This year, I'm really looking forward to finally taking behavioral economics. I haven't, but I feel like that's the one everyone always wants to get into because it's such an interesting topic. But now I am a senior and I have good enough registration times to get it. I think, yeah, I also really liked, sometimes you take a class and you're not expecting like necessarily much of it, but you end up enjoying it. Like I really liked state and local government. Econ 337, I think. I think that was the first upper level econ elective I took, but I really liked it and wasn't expecting to get so much out of it.
Now, who taught that
like
one?
a group. What's that?
Who taught that one?
When I took it, it was Professor Chang, I believe. I think someone else teaches it now though. But it was a good class. Yeah. Oh, and just to jump back to the earlier thing, my non-econ thing, by the way, is women's club soccer. So that is truly like not academic. Yep, that's what I do outside of school stuff.
So Daniel, yeah, you've taken a bunch of 400 level courses.
Yeah, I was gonna say I have only taken a couple of 300 level classes. I took a international finance class with Larry Cristiano that I really liked. I think less so for the content and more so for the person. So this is maybe like a weird piece of advice, but I think the course a lot of the times matters much less than the incentives the professor has to teach the class. And this is difficult maybe to see just from CTEX and stuff. But ideally, you want a professor who's very passionate about the material and the class that they're teaching versus someone who's just phoning it in. I think most of the econ professors will fit the first category, but some go above and beyond, like Larry Cristiano, for example. If you're interested in graduate school, I would recommend that you take the 400 level classes, not maybe the first year ones, but actually the second year ones. And so the first year ones are difficult and they're actually not that applicable for research, and you'll be graded on a curve against other PhD students. So it's also hard to get a good grade. The second year classes are usually taught by junior faculty. So that's faculty who have only been a couple of years out of grad school in their areas of research. And they're geared towards how can I convince this group of new graduate students to join my research agenda. So they're a lot more fun. They're a lot more specific. I don't know if this is a secret, but everyone gets an A in all of them as long as you, kind of, put in the effort. But I don't know. Those are all of the best classes I've taken at Northwestern have been second year 400 level classes, just because the professors are so passionate about what they're doing and the material is really interesting. And there are also no exams. So, it's like a win-win situation.
Can I jump in really quick? So these are two of our star undergrads, and you can see that they're wise and they've given a lot of good advice. I want to jump on this just a little bit. So when they've been talking about interviewing and being a potential colleague and things like that, whether you decide to do economics or not, it's good to sort of think about your think about, well, what should I take this quarter? That's kind of a short run sort of decision to make. And the long run is, what do I want to do in my whole Northwestern career? And what do I want to do after it? So it's good to have those thoughts and make some of those plans and have some conversations to give you some directions to go in. And so when people come to us for advice, we usually ask, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do? And we try to nudge you to make progress in those various directions. I like to use the analogy of, like, if you wanted to be a doctor, think about what you would want to do at Northwestern. You'd probably, do the pre-med track. You'd probably, join like a pre-med club. At some point, you'd do some lab work, do a chemistry lab where you're wearing a, white coat so you can show that you can mix chemicals and things. You'd probably want to, shadow a doctor so you could, understand what you're getting into. You'd probably volunteer somewhere so you look like the person who has the characters and values that would make a good doctor. You'd probably study for the MCAT, right? And you generally want to do things that make you look like you would be a good doctor. Another part of that is getting some recommendations and getting some references from faculty. So at some point, you need to get to know some faculty. So whether it's us or whether it's somebody else, take the time to go to office hours and get to know people. And when they say, hey, do you want to go out for lunch, or do you want to help out with babysitting, or, here's an event that's off campus, take advantage of those things, show up and get to know people. Like, so many times people ask for recommendation, like letters of recommendation. And as somebody who writes a lot of those, you want to be able to say more than, well, so-and-so sat in the back of the class and got an A, but you also want to be able to comment on what else makes them a well-rounded student and things about their integrity, stuff like that. So start to groom people who can, write letters for you, but also think about signaling what would make me look like an interesting colleague, and have those other interests. So for example, Maddy was talking about cooking, right? And Daniel was talking about fishing, like caring for fish and things like that, right? And so having that other stuff to talk about is really important. Sometimes people will ask you, job interview questions that are very specific to the discipline, testing your knowledge. But a lot of times it's, if you end up sitting next to somebody at a party, can you talk to them about weird stuff that's not economics? So, diversify and have fun, and we hope that economics is part of your experience and part of your portfolio, but find the things that you're passionate about and do those things, because it makes such a difference when you like what you do. You get up in the morning and go to work, it's like, yeah, this is cool, I have a good job, that sort of thing.
Can I just chime in here? Do you mind? I definitely agree that it's not bad to have a degree of intentionality at some point with what you do, and thinking about like maybe at some point how you'll be perceived. But I assume we're speaking mostly to incoming freshmen. So I would just stress, do not feel like you have to have it all figured out, or really anything. In fact, I would just say follow your interests, see where that takes you. Like, I was lucky to know I really liked econ in high school. I took the 2 AP classes and loved it. But outside of that, I mean, I didn't know what I wanted to do like for a job or anything. So just take time to explore, and sometimes I personally let my academic interests lead me, I think, more, just in the sense that I also really like history. And so I like the math side of econ, and I like the analytical piece. I really like creative work and getting to like write and express myself that way. And just like, I like when there's nuance and ambiguity. So kind of figuring those things out and kind of putting together like a very logical side of my brain, but a slightly more like creative side, or expressing that logic through like writing as opposed to hard numbers, kind of led me to eventually figure out I wanted to practice law. But that wasn't like, I think that was mid-sophomore year before that thought even occurred to me. So just take your time, explore, talk to people who interest you, go see what certain clubs or professions are about, but don't worry, you'll figure it out.
Yeah. Now, Jim, at what point did you decide you're going to be an econ major? I mean, for me, it was basically sophomore year, I think. I tried a bunch of things, like, I like this.
I had a science scholarship. I started in physics. So
yeah, I started with physics too.
I was a runner, and I had a bunch of stress fractures. So all of a sudden I had a bunch of time on my hands. I thought, oh, I'll try econ. I read through the catalog. I read through all the majors, and econ sounded the most interesting. So I thought, I'll try that. And yeah, that's how I got started, and I really loved it. Yeah.
You also majored in math, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. It was a nice combination. The two fields really complement each other. A lot of my friends wanted to go into insurance. They wanted to become actuaries. And I signed up for I signed up for the first exam, but I just couldn't bring myself to study for it because I just wasn't passionate about it. I didn't care. And so I wanted to do other things. And so, yeah. So we all have different paths, but yeah, I will echo Maddy's point about, you don't have to have your life plan figured out right now. And we want you to declare a major, I believe, early in your sophomore year, but now is a perfect time to dabble and try things and explore. Yeah, so we hope you give econ a try.
Well, on that notion of things outside of econ matter, what did Maddy and Daniel take that were sort of a surprisingly fun class, like outside of the world of econ?
Let's see. I remember loving my freshman seminar, which it's kind of one of those things you come in and you're like, all right, you have to take one, but I loved mine. It was on Turkish food and culture. Great class. I mean, I love food and talking about it, so I guess it wasn't so shocking, but it's kind of nice that something you're required to do can actually be fun. Outside of that, I mean, I love history, so I wasn't surprised that I like my history classes. But in particular, I took a great class on the Vietnam War this past spring, and another one called Germany after 1945. So looking at Germany after World War II. Both were wonderful. And also, I think having an econ background sometimes in, non-econ classes, like really not econ, can be very helpful. Because a lot of times in history, they'll be like, oh, if you're talking about something like the Great Depression, actually understanding it from an economic perspective or what GDP means, not a bad thing at all.
So my guess is this also doesn't include math classes, and so kind of caveating both of those. My answer is also in the history department. It seems like there's a lot of kind of, and so there's a entry-level class, History 250-2. It's taught by this guy named Daniel Luo. It's a very good class. Probably my favorite probably top some econ classes as well. And it's just like, so the history of the world from 1750 until today, and every class is kind of like a self-contained 45-minute long podcast. So he times them all perfectly, so they're all like they all end in like a minute, and then each one is like just listening to a podcast. It was really good. It's hard to get into though, so that's like a econ thing, right? If a lot of people are really into something, usually it's good, it's high quality. So if you're not sure about what to take, look for the classes that are difficult to get into, especially for multiple years.
I love Immerwar's writing so much. I slip him into a bunch of my upper level classes. He's just fantastic. It's really great to have geniuses named Daniel around, I must say. Somebody popped up a question: should they worry about getting shut out of intro econs, that they've got a late registration time? Jim is shaking his head no. Yeah, we try to keep the core classes open, that they're big, there's a ton of seats. The one I'm teaching is in the Ryan Family Auditorium. It seats like 800 or something like that. So yeah, there's no way you're getting shut out. Some of the upper levels fill up, but like behavioral. But for the most part, if you want to get into an econ class, as long as you've had the prereqs, you can. And yeah, for the cores, we're really committed to, if you want to get in there, you can get in there. You can make the progress you want. Well, I'm going to run off to the business institution. I'm sorry, I'm going to run off to the Roads to Business at Northwestern. But yeah, if you guys have any other questions, please get in touch with us, because we want your experience here to be a good one. And we'd love to have you all major or minor in economics.
Sounds good. And even if Dr. Witte's leaving, we can stick around and answer some more questions.
Terrific. Thank you, Jim.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
Thank you, Daniel and Maddy and Kayla and Christy and everybody who made this happen. Thank you all for attending, and I will see you guys around.
Let's see. Let's see here. So we had mentioned just a little bit about taking some time to transition to Northwestern. Daniel and Maddy, can you talk a little bit about how Northwestern is different from high school?
Daniel, would you like to go first?
Sure.
Mix it up.
So I think a couple of differences. One is intellectual freedom almost. I think there's just a lot more, options and things that you can take, and things that you're interested in you can pursue. Like, I don't know if it was just my high school, but I always felt like, I was limited. Like, my high school didn't offer any econ classes, so I self-studied the AP econ classes, for example. But here we have, a lot of econ classes and everything that you could think of. So that's nice and different. The second is the time back in your schedule, which I thought was surprising, and I really like. So, for example, I don't like getting up early. So my first class next quarter will start at 12 p.m. And that's something you can never do in high school. Or, I have friends who only have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday classes. So they have 4-day long weekends where they can, travel and go to other states. Or maybe not your first year, but, even with your first year, you can have long weekends when you can relax or something. But that's a double-edged sword, because if you have like a 2-hour hole in your schedule and you don't use it to do homework, that type of stuff can pile up. So it's a lot more individual responsibility than high school, which I know is like a cliche, but I think it hits pretty hard if you're not prepared for it. And then the last thing is also, I don't know, like, my parents are both really good at cooking, so I had a really good food at home. And the dining halls are they're sufficient, but they're not homemade or anything. And so it's easy to gain weight and be unhappy with attending halls. And I think that's another difference from just being at home for a lot of people. So those are the three things that, struck me in the short amount of time right now.
Yeah, I would pretty much agree with everything Daniel said, including the food one. I mean, listen, you're going to be fine. The food's okay. But I love living off campus now and cooking for myself, I will say, but that's beside the point. Let's see. I definitely think the independence thing is a double-edged sword. I mean, I've always been kind of an independent person. I loved getting, just feeling like my time was mine, which is nice when maybe you want to see friends or just carve out some time to do work. But, your time's yours and you have to decide how you use it. Freshman year, I definitely didn't sleep as much as I should have. You try to keep up and have like a social life, and you're making so many new friends and you're trying to do school. It can be a lot. Just give yourself time, try to take care of yourself throughout it. But academically speaking, I would say overall Northwestern is harder than high school in some ways, but like Daniel said, for the most part, you really get to take what interests you. I remember taking some classes in high school and just like chemistry, I just didn't want to be there at any point. Which is, versus in college, you signed up for it, you're opting into it. So it's kind of a different feeling of responsibility and ownership. Anything else? I would say reading. One thing I tend to think about when building my schedule that, again, you don't get to do in high school. I like to personally balance between like reading and paper classes and then tests and classes that are more like test problem set heavy. Some people really like one or the other, but that's another thing to think about as you build your schedule. You can usually tell if you look at C-text or just, if you're taking a history class, like you're not really going to have problem sets, rarely papers. But if you're in an econ class, it can kind of go either way. So I think that's something different. But don't worry, you got into Northwestern, you will find your way through. I guess I don't really have anything else to say that's super different.
One of the things we really stress is helping people find resources. A big part of the transition is learning to study and trying to figure out, well, like, how do I do this? Do I go to class? Do I take notes, or do I want, how many problems should I do? How should I study for exams? Things like that. I into the chat, I put a little plug for ASLA, the Academic Support and Learning Advancement site. So there are drop-in tutors that meet at various places. They're usually, I think it's like Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights, 8 to 10 or something like that at various places around campus. But if you're taking 201, 202, you're taking calc or stats, courses like that, there are veteran students who have done this before, who are there to help out. And so learn to use resources. Don't be afraid of using office hours. In fact, office hours are a good time to get to know your professors and talk about stuff. So, Maddie's into soccer, Mark was into running, I'm into bicycling. There's lots of, fun stuff to talk about outside of economics too. So get to know some people. Let's see, I think we're just about out of time. If you have any more questions, feel free to ask any of us. My email is j-hornsten@northwestern.edu. I'm pretty easy to find on the first, on the first year page part of our website. We want to thank you for coming and asking questions, and we hope this was informative. Yeah, check out the website. If you want any more info, contact us, and good luck. Whatever you decide to do, go get them. Have a great fall quarter and a great first year, and we look forward to meeting you. All right, take care of yourselves. We will sign off here.
Good luck, everyone.